So you're probably on this video because you want some more information on SegWit 2x, the Bitcoin hard fork, and what is coming in November. So you've come to the right place. We're going to go over a bunch of information about this. I'm Matt Sheriff, and take some notes, or maybe rewatch this, because there is a lot of information to cover in a good way, because a lot of things are happening in this space. So for years now, Bitcoin has had this scaling debate. Basically, how are we going to make the Bitcoin network as efficient as possible and take it to as many people as we can in the best form possible? And that's where a lot of arguing comes around, because there's a lot of different initiatives, projects, and things that are put forth to try and make the network better and keep growing as the Bitcoin network keeps growing, as more people keep getting involved with it and all that good stuff. So in August, on the 1st, SegWit was initiated through a UASF, which is a user-activated soft fork, which basically updated the network. And this actually made way for SegWit 2x and other kind of updates that would change the way that Bitcoin is run. So that's basically saying that the 1 megabyte block that we have on the Bitcoin network now would increase to a 2 megabyte block, and could also further increase to 4 megabytes or 8 megabytes. So that's one of the biggest things happening within the SegWit 2x, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a couple minutes. But that also gave way on August 1st to Bitcoin Cash, which forked away from the legacy chain of Bitcoin, which basically means the original chain on what the Bitcoin network is. And they've basically become an alternative cryptocurrency to Bitcoin and doing their own thing. So what did SegWit actually do? And we can see it here. It basically increased the number of transactions that you could squeeze into a block and fix some of the bugs inside the Bitcoin protocol and network itself. So it did help, in a sense, fix some things, but isn't necessarily a long-term solution. But this did give way to the Lightning Network, which is basically second layer solutions that can be now put onto the Bitcoin network because SegWit was activated. Not to get too technical, and I like to keep things simple, but basically the Lightning Network is almost like a freeing up of space on the actual network itself. So building another layer on top. So think about it like you have a freeway, and there's a lot of traffic on that freeway because a lot of cars are coming onto that freeway, just like a lot of people are coming into the Bitcoin network every day, every week, every month. And then from that, we can build another highway kind of on top that loops over the top, that frees up traffic, frees up space, so the network isn't as congested. That's exactly what the Lightning Network does, and builds that second layer. I feel like that's the best way to explain it and understand it. So from that, one of the big pieces of news this year was in May 2017, the New York Agreement was signed. And that basically means that there was a meetup at a hotel of a bunch of different people in the Bitcoin space, developers, leaders of mining companies, etc., that basically decided that SegWit would happen within the next 6 months and a block size increase would occur. So 58 companies located in 22 countries agreed to this, which have around 85% of the hashing power of the overall network, which is obviously quite a lot. So that basically means that this initiative would go forward and would happen. One of the interesting things is, though, since that time, there hasn't been an updated list of the companies that really are still on board. So this could change, and it'll be an interesting 4 to 5 weeks of seeing how this kind of develops and who really stays on board with SegWit 2x. Because as this article mentions, one of the big companies called F2 Pool basically withdrew their agreement, and this could happen with other companies as well. So it'll be interesting to see who does go on with this. And it also mentions Bitwala brought back their promise to implement SegWit 2x code into their mining rigs, which basically initiates them not supporting it. So with that being said, it's supposed to happen on, that's the date, so just over 4 weeks from when I'm shooting this video. So basically the Bitcoin core team, which is kind of the original Bitcoin team, don't support SegWit 2x, they don't want it, and then the initiative to change the block size is happening through other developers that do want this movement to happen. Interesting arguments go on either side, whether this should happen or not, but basically why people want a increased block size is because since SegWit has initiated on August 1st, there hasn't been a drastic change in transaction times or transaction costs. So a 2 megabyte block would see more transactions being able to fit into a particular block every 10 minutes. So there'll be less competition, which means the cost would come down. And then also you could fit more transactions in there. So the timing of exchanging Bitcoin as a value would go down too. So that's the biggest reasons why people want, or the miners want, the 2 megabyte blocks to increase efficiency and help mainstream adoption. So I have made notes, so I'm going through them just in case, because I don't want to miss anything. So Coinbase and Bitfinex have actually announced that they will support both chains if it does happen, and I'm sure many exchanges will as well, as that won't be very surprising, because they can make money off that. The same thing happened with Bitcoin Cash, and people who had their Bitcoin on particular wallets or particular exchanges were able to get both tokens and do what they want with Bitcoin Cash. They wanted to hold it or they wanted to sell it, etc., etc. The forking is basically a splitting of the tokens. So if you have your Bitcoin in the right place, you can get both tokens. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this video in terms of what to do up until the run-up of this hard fork. One of the big things especially is what we call replay protection. And what that means is, for example, when Bitcoin Cash forked away, they implemented replay protection. So that meant that once a transaction was done on that chain, it could only be done on that chain. With SegWit 2x, they do not want to implement replay protection. And one big thing that says is that they believe that they are the Bitcoin. They believe that they are the real chain because right now they have the biggest percentage of consensus of hashing power that said they would run SegWit 2x. So what that means is if the Bitcoin core team of Bitcoin as it is now and SegWit 2x as the change, as the hard fork, and both of them don't have replay protection, you could basically do one transaction on one chain and then implement the exact same transaction on the other chain and get double the tokens. So that's always not a good thing, and I think will change, because up until the coming of November 18th, I can't really see them both not having replay protection. But the next 4 to 5 weeks will be interesting. I'm sure things will change and different news will come out in terms of what's going to happen. So that's just something to be wary of and to understand in terms of the protocol and how they are building each of these things out. So some do suggest that the Bitcoin core team should just implement replay protection anyway, but I think it's more of a kind of pride and legacy thing in terms of, no, why should we implement it? Because we're the original Bitcoin. So that doesn't seem to be flying very well, and I don't think that'll happen anyway. But I do believe that one of them will have to implement it regardless, because nobody wants to be double spending. So this article is actually one of the best that I've found for right now. I'm sure there'll be more coming because of obviously the updates that will be coming. So I will drop this article below in the video description so you can check it out. One of the big things too is that this article is kind of saying that the bigger chain will win. So what it's saying is, if the majority go with SegWit 2x, for example, and then that's left with the other Bitcoin, whatever it's going to be called, then there can be an attack on that chain because it's got so much less of the power of the other chain. So that's always can be a worrying time for these chains in the hard forks, because this is very different to the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, because that was kind of a no-brainer, and we knew the consensus and what was happening. Right now, there seems to be somewhat of a consensus of SegWit 2x happening, although we don't know what a lot of people and a lot of companies will do, because there's still a lot of time left. But there could be a fundamental change in Bitcoin itself, and both of these development teams are wanting to be the original Bitcoin, it seems. So that begs the question of, well, what are they going to be called? You know, who's going to be called Bitcoin, or who's going to be called Bitcoin 2x? What's the original or legacy Bitcoin going to be called? So that's always something to think about, and it'll be obviously interesting to see who sort of backs down and who will win. So that's going to be an up in the air debate going forward. So one of the big things is, what should I do up and coming of this hard fork? One is, as it gets to November 18th, make sure you're not moving your Bitcoin around. Just have it in a safe place that you're not gonna, transfer it, because during hard forks it can get lost in the midst of the craziness. Own your private keys, so that means keeping your Bitcoin in an off-storage wallet, an Nano S Ledger, a Trezor, a paper wallet, an online wallet if you own the private keys to it, the specific passphrase. And then also knowing and understanding the exchanges and what their motives are for the hard fork, whether they're supporting it, whether they're not, if you want to get both tokens, etc., etc. And I'll do more. I do have videos on that, but I will do some more videos going forward. So make sure you check out those and subscribe to the channel. But all in all, what do I think, and what do many people think about this hard fork and SegWit 2x? And they're reading a lot of different chats, and obviously there's a lot of content coming out. There is a big split on what's happening here, and is SegWit 2x the best thing for Bitcoin in the future? And you have to think that, for me, you know, Bitcoin has risen so much because it's so resilient. You know, it's resilient to attacks, to hackers, to government regulation, to people regulation, to, you know, so many different threats that when you attack this system, the ecosystem kind of becomes stronger in itself. So that's something that's amazing about this network of value and why it's grown so exponentially. And October 14th right now, that's why I believe we're seeing new highs of this particular store of value. But I think with SegWit 2x and the initiative that it is, and the New York agreement itself, you know, we have a bunch of people and many different companies and many different mining rigs that are coming together and basically saying, okay, this is what we see that's best for the future of Bitcoin. So in a sense, some people believe that this is an internal attack on Bitcoin, and that they are changing the way Bitcoin is run and the protocol and the code that is happening in a sort of centralized way, which isn't necessarily what Bitcoin is about and what a decentralized network of value is about. So a lot of people don't like it, and people believe if we survive this, we've, you know, survived everything that can be thrown at Bitcoin. On the other side, you know, people say that we should have a good amount of respect for the Bitcoin miners and all of that sort of stuff, because they are the ones who verify the network. But on the other side of things, the miners don't have anything without the users. And are people willing to, you know, go down this road of a 2 megabyte block that can turn into a 4 megabyte block, that can turn into an 8 megabyte block, that can increase the centralization of mining, and maybe the centralization of the network. So there is a good argument and a good split on what is happening here, and whether it's the best thing for Bitcoin itself. Personally, right now, I don't think we need SegWit 2x. I think the 1 megabyte block suffices, and a lot of different develops need to come surrounding innovation of the network, 2-layer solutions, and all of that good stuff. I don't think there's enough time and thought that have gone into SegWit 2x. You know, 3 months, you know, since August that the next fork would happen. That possibly might be a little bit soon, but a lot of different people have their own opinions. Ultimately, I think Bitcoin will be fine and it will survive this, as it has stood the test of time before. Going forward, I will be creating some more videos, so make sure you subscribe to the channel, check those out, because a lot more news is going to be coming out, and things will become more clear over the next 4 weeks, as different developments will happen, different news will come out by different developers, and give us a better idea of really what's going to go down on November 18th, if it happens on November 18th. So I want to say a big thank you for watching this video, taking the time out to get this information. I've done quite a lot of research and spoken to a lot of different people who are very knowledgeable in this space, so hopefully that some of that transferred to you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I have a lot more info coming. I appreciate your time. There'll be videos popping up that you're probably interested in. You can check out my free newsletter as well below in the description box. A lot of good stuff, the latest and greatest on the Bitcoin and crypto space. So I'm Matt Sheriff. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.